Today, we're going to explore a deeply important and complex topic, understanding death and bereavement across the lifespan. We'll look at this from multiple angles, biological, psychological, and cultural, to really grasp how death, grief, and development intersect throughout life. I'm excited to take you through these perspectives and shed light on how we experience and cope with loss in different ways. Let's begin. Death impacts us all deeply, no matter our age, and personal stories of loss really highlight how powerful those emotions can be. It's something we all face infants, young adults, elders. Death is a universal experience that plays a critical role in shaping who we are. From the earliest moments in life, like the initial separations we experience as babies, all the way through to the reflections we have at the end of life, death influences how we grow emotionally, how we manage our feelings, and how we relate to others. Understanding death as part of our development helps us see its importance in both our individual journeys and our shared human experience. This lifespan perspective reminds us that death isn't just an endpoint, but a factor that shapes our growth throughout every stage of life. When we talk about death, it's important to understand that biologically, it's not just a single moment, but a complex and gradual process. Medically, death is often defined by either the irreversible stopping of circulation and breathing or by total brain death, which requires thorough testing to confirm that there's no brain activity. However, this definition can get complicated, especially when dealing with patients in comas, where it's not always clear-cut. Beyond biology, death's meaning changes dramatically across cultures and history. Different societies have unique mourning rituals and ways of coping, shaped by their cultural and religious backgrounds. For example, medieval farewells were very different from the hospital settings we see today, highlighting how our understanding and expression of death reflect broader social and historical contexts. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's model of the five emotional stages, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, has been foundational in understanding the emotional journey of dying. Importantly, hope weaves throughout these stages, offering a continuous thread of resilience. This framework shifted how we care for terminally ill patients by emphasizing their emotional needs and promoting a more compassionate approach. However, it's also important to recognize the critiques. Not everyone experiences these stages in a neat sequence. In fact, reactions to dying are highly individual, influenced by factors like personality, the nature of the illness, and coping styles. Beyond just facing death, many patients focus on living meaningfully, setting goals, nurturing relationships, and finding purpose despite their diagnosis. This highlights the complexity and deeply personal nature of the dying experience. When we talk about bereavement, it's important to distinguish between three key concepts. Bereavement refers to the actual experience of losing someone, grief is the emotional response to that loss, and mourning is how we express that grief, often shaped by cultural practices. According to the Parks and Bowlby attachment model, grief unfolds in distinct phases. The first phase is initial numbness, where the reality of the loss hasn't fully registered emotionally yet. Following that, we enter a phase of yearning and anxiety, where the person deeply longs for the one they lost and feels a strong sense of separation. The third phase brings despair and disorganization, where the mourner struggles with overwhelming sadness and difficulty managing daily life. Finally, in the reorganization phase, there is a gradual adjustment to living without the loved one. The dual process model adds an important perspective here, showing how people oscillate between confronting their painful emotions, known as loss-oriented coping, and focusing on everyday responsibilities and rebuilding their life, which is restoration-oriented coping. This back-and-forth movement helps individuals gradually find a new balance in their lives. When we look at how infants understand death and experience grief, it happens in several important stages. First, infants don't truly grasp that death is permanent, but they start to develop basic ideas about absence through simple experiences, like playing peekaboo. This helps them begin to understand when something or someone is gone. Next, when a caregiver is lost, infants enter what's called the protest phase, where they might cry and actively search for the missing person, showing clear signs of distress. Following this, in the despair phase, their behavior changes. They can become withdrawn and show signs similar to depression. Finally, in the detachment phase, infants start to show renewed interest in their surroundings, seeming to detach somewhat from the loss. All these reactions are actually part of a biological process aimed at restoring attachment and protecting the infant. This highlights why sensitive caregiving is crucial during these times to help the infant cope and eventually recover from the loss. By the time children reach ages 5 to 7, they generally start to understand that death is final and irreversible. They recognize it as something that happens to all living things and often see it as a biological event. However, this understanding is shaped by cultural teachings and their own personal experiences, meaning that how a child perceives death can vary quite a bit. When it comes to bereavement, children express their grief in many different ways. Some may show sadness or anger, while others might regress in behavior or have disruptions in their play. What's really important is the role of supportive and honest caregiving. This kind of care helps children process their grief more effectively, supporting both their emotional development and adjustment. Including children in mourning practices also plays a key role, giving them a chance to express their feelings and feel connected during difficult times. Adolescents tend to develop a more complex understanding of death, combining the idea of biological finality with beliefs about a spiritual afterlife. This dual perspective reflects their growing ability to think abstractly. At the same time, they face unique challenges related to mortality, such as concerns about their body image, struggles for autonomy, evolving identity, and the need for peer acceptance. When adolescents experience bereavement, it can deeply affect their mental health, increasing the risk of depression and behavioral problems. One often overlooked source of grief is the death of a friend, which is frequently sudden or violent, making the loss even more difficult to process. Because of these factors, it's crucial to provide sensitive support and foster awareness to help adolescents cope with grief during this vulnerable time. When it comes to adult bereavement, grief doesn't look the same for everyone. Adults follow a variety of grief trajectories. Many show resilience and experience only minimal distress after losing a loved one. Then there are those who go through what we call common grief. They initially feel significant distress, but gradually recover over time. However, some individuals face chronic or complicated grief, where their suffering lasts much longer and significantly impairs their day-to-day functioning. Resilient grievers are able to bounce back relatively quickly and continue with their lives despite the loss. On the other hand, common grief involves a period of intense emotional pain, but with support and time, people tend to heal and adjust. Chronic or complicated grief is more challenging. These individuals struggle to recover and may need additional interventions. Several factors influence how a person experiences grief. The closeness of the relationship plays a big role. Losing someone very close can intensify grief. The nature of the death matters too, with sudden or unexpected losses often leading to more intense grief. Personality traits also contribute. Someone with high neuroticism might find it harder to cope, while secure attachment styles can offer some protection. Finally, having strong social support can make a crucial difference, helping individuals navigate through their grief journey. When we talk about aging, there are two main theories to consider: program theories and damage theories. Program theories suggest that aging follows a genetic timetable. Our cells have built-in mechanisms like telomere shortening and epigenetic clocks that gradually limit how many times cells can divide and how well they function over time. These mechanisms act like biological clocks that control the aging process. On the other hand, damage theories focus on the idea that aging results from accumulated wear and tear in our cells. This damage comes from free radicals and metabolic byproducts constantly attacking cells, which gradually impairs their function. It's important to recognize that both genetics, or nature, and environmental factors, or nurture, play crucial roles in how aging unfolds. Factors like stress and lifestyle choices can accelerate or slow down the pace of aging and influence when biological death occurs. This interplay highlights the complexity and plasticity of human development throughout life, meaning our aging process is not fixed but influenced by a dynamic combination of internal and external factors. When we talk about end-of-life care, it's important to understand the differences between hospice and palliative care. Hospice care is all about prioritizing comfort and dignity for patients who have terminal illnesses. The focus shifts from trying to cure the disease to managing pain, providing psychosocial support, and involving the family closely, Often this care takes place right in the patient's home, making it more personal and compassionate. Palliative care, on the other hand, has a broader scope. It aims to address not just the physical symptoms, but also the psychological and spiritual needs of patients. What's key here is that palliative care can be provided alongside curative treatments, supporting patients no matter what stage of illness they're in. Now, these areas of care bring up complex ethical debates, especially around euthanasia and assisted suicide. Laws and cultural attitudes differ greatly across the world, which creates ongoing discussions about what is acceptable or humane in these difficult situations. Finally, cultural norms play a significant role in how hospice and palliative care are accepted and utilized. These cultural differences can present challenges, but they also shape the way patients and families experience end-of-life care, influencing decisions and the overall approach to comfort and dignity as life comes to an end. When we look at death, mourning, and grief around the world, it's clear that practices vary widely. Different cultures have their own unique ways of understanding and dealing with loss, shaped by deep social meanings and spiritual beliefs. One challenge we face in studying these behaviors is avoiding ethnocentrism. That is, not judging other cultures by the standards of our own, so we can truly appreciate their distinct grieving processes. Mourning rituals themselves can take many forms, from openly expressive displays of emotion to more restrained, communal ceremonies that focus on maintaining bonds with ancestors. It's crucial to approach these differences with respect and cultural sensitivity, especially when supporting people who are grieving. Recognizing the spiritual and social significance behind these practices helps us both study and respond to grief in a way that honors each society's traditions. When facing loss, social support plays a crucial role in helping individuals cope and adjust, whether from family, friends, or the wider community. This support is essential across all stages of life, providing a foundation of comfort and strength. Within families, cohesion and open communication are particularly beneficial, especially for children and adolescents dealing with bereavement. These elements boost resilience, helping young people navigate their grief more effectively. For those experiencing complicated grief, professional interventions like psychotherapy and family therapy can be invaluable. They not only address intense grief reactions but also promote healing. Programs such as the Family Bereavement Program have shown lasting positive outcomes, including reduced grief symptoms and better emotional regulation. This program underscores the importance of targeted supportive services in facilitating recovery and emotional well-being after loss. When we talk about post-traumatic growth, we're referring to the positive psychological changes that many people experience after going through a loss. It's not just about recovering, but actually finding new meaning and strength in the aftermath. This growth can take several forms, such as shifting life priorities to focus on what truly matters, building greater resilience to face future challenges, deepening one's spiritual understanding, and developing stronger, more meaningful relationships. It's important to recognize that this growth doesn't mean the pain disappears. In fact, distress and growth often happen side by side. People are most likely to experience post-traumatic growth when their grief feels significant but still manageable, not overwhelming. Finally, while much of what we know comes from people reflecting back on their experiences, post-traumatic growth is really about an ongoing adaptive process. Struggling with loss pushes individuals to make sense of their experiences, encouraging personal development and a renewed sense of meaning in life. As we reach the conclusion, it's important to recognize that death is not just an endpoint but an integral part of human development throughout life. Biological, psychological, and cultural factors all interact dynamically to shape how we experience and understand death. By appreciating death's role, we gain a deeper insight into the complex nature of development, its multidirectionality, its plasticity, and the way it is influenced by context. This perspective also invites us to engage with life's transitions and inevitable losses with greater compassion. Ultimately, death is woven into the human journey, spanning from infancy through old age and beyond, reminding us of the continuity and interconnectedness of life.